Hey guys, this is Nurse Jana here on Nurse Converse, and I am so happy today to be having Kelsey Springer on. Kelsey is a nurse and she has a story to tell, and we are going to dive into that here soon. However, I do want to preface this is an episode on violence. We are going to talk about some things that have happened to both of us violently, so we wanted to give you an opportunity to prepare yourself. We really want you encouraged to dive in. We're here to help. We're here to give you resources, comfort, and solutions, as well as some options for ways that you can get involved to help prevent violence and make your life a lot better at the bedside or wherever you're chose to go as a nurse. So let's hop into it. Kelsey, thank you for coming on today. Thank you for telling your story. This is a really big issue in nursing right now, as we all know, and in healthcare in general, not just nursing. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into nursing, how long you've been a nurse, and what made you decide to be a nurse.
Yeah, thank you, Jana. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on here and giving me the opportunity to share my story and share my experiences. This is really meaningful to me. I have been a nurse. I've been an RN for a little over 9 years, but I've been in healthcare since I was 16. So just about half my life. And I, from a very young age, knew that I wanted to be in some form of medicine. I was always stealing. My mom became an EMT and then was a nurse. And so I kind of watched her go through that. I was always stealing her textbooks and looking at all the gross anatomy stuff. And so I knew I wanted to do something in healthcare, and it just kind of naturally ended up that I took a very stepwise approach and started as a CNA and pretty much did everything I could up until becoming an RN, and just got my master's a couple days ago.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So you've done the whole route. You started from the very beginning and you've worked your way to a master's degree. Congratulations.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
tell us a
Thank
little
you so
bit
much.
about where you are now in nursing. What is your role now in nursing?
Yeah, so I am a critical care nurse educator now. I've spent the majority of my nursing career in various critical care settings, from the ICU to flight nursing to cardiac cath lab, and now get to be on the teaching side of things.
Awesome. So when you got into nursing, from the day you decided you wanted to be a nurse and went all those steps, when you got to the bedside, was it what you thought it was going to be?
Parts of it, yes. And then a lot of it, I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
Isn't that the truth for all of us, especially in this day? Did you nurse through COVID?
Right. I did. Yes. I was bedside in a couple different ICUs throughout COVID.
And the time before COVID, when you, as we call it, pre-nursing COVID, pre-healthcare COVID versus now, what happened? Did you see the shift in healthcare I know that there's been issues before, but did COVID really send it over the edge in your opinion, or was it status quo for you nursing through COVID?
No, there was a stark difference, kind of pre-COVID and post-COVID. And I think, not only was just delivering care so much different, we were in disaster time for care, but just the environment that we're in definitely changed. And a lot of things have gone somewhat back to the pre-COVID world. But then there's a lot of things that have definitely stayed in terms of just kind of the environment that we're in, and just humans in general, how we take care of them, how they respond to us, just our general interactions.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And that's where we kind of want to go with this episode today, guys, is talking about violence and where we are in healthcare and violence. This is going to be a 3-part series. And today, Kelsey is joining me to talk about her experience, and I'll share a little bit about mine. And we bring that COVID into there. It seems there's the pre-COVID nursing healthcare world, and then there's the post-COVID nursing healthcare world. And when we look at how we've cared for patients, the violence has risen absolutely immensely since before COVID. I know it was on the rise, but then around 2018, JACO had some new Sentinel 59 events that they needed to bring into the nursing world of JCO world to show us that, listen, we know that this is a problem on the radar. We need to take it seriously. But here we are in 2025, and it is at an all-time high. So let's talk about what happened with you, and we'll talk about what happened with me. There were two different types of, I hate to classify violence, but there was the patient that you had versus the patient I had. Let's give us a little bit of an idea about what happened with your incidents with your encounter with violence with a patient.
Yeah. So my experience was with a very typical ICU patient. It was with a patient who had recently been intubated and was experiencing, because of their medical diagnosis, they were not, they weren't with it. They were delirious. They were only oriented to self. They did not know where they were. They did not know why they were in the hospital. They had no idea what was going on. So they were very scared, but they were also very, they were not redirectable. We could not get them to follow directions. They would not really, they just couldn't comprehend what was going on. And so what ended up happening was this patient was, we had many, central line, IVs, various things, catheter, all that kind of stuff. And the patient was trying to pull all of that off of themselves, and essentially was going to cause a lot of harm to themselves. And then they were also trying to get out of bed, leave the room. They were a younger patient to be seeing in the ICU, and also very, very strong. So what ended up ultimately happening was this patient ended up hitting me in the face. I got uppercut by the patient's forearm, and it dislocated my jaw. And thankfully, it kind of dislocated and reduced all at the same time, but it destroyed my jaw joints. And ultimately, I ended up having to have pretty significant reconstructive surgery a few years ago. It's been almost 4 years since the injury itself, and I'm still in braces. I'm still recovering. But I got permanently injured that day. I can't chew normally. I have daily problems kind of after that incident. And I think the biggest thing for me is just knowing that this was a pretty typical ICU patient. And I was not, I never expected something like that to happen.
Wow. When the initial, you realized you'd been hurt, you've been hurt, you needed to have care. How did you go about that? Did you have to finish taking care of the patient? Were you provided immediate care after? Walk us through the aftermath of, okay, I realize I've been hurt at work by a patient. What's about to happen next? What do I do next?
Yeah. So, I mean, initially the adrenaline was going and I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm fine. Like there was multiple people in the room when it happened, and someone looked over at me and was like, oh my gosh, are you okay? It's like, yeah, I'm totally fine. Like nothing bad could ever happen to me at work. I'm fine. And then, after a few minutes when we got everything kind of settled down and I was able to step out of the room, the most vivid memory I have is just recognizing that every single one of my teeth hurt. I could feel all of my teeth. I'm like, oh, this isn't good. And then that just kind of slowly crept into my face hurting, my head hurting, just everything hurting. And I think within like 20 minutes, I recognized like I need to leave. I need to go to the ER. I need to get taken care of. And that was really well facilitated for me. And I think that was something that I very much appreciate, as I was really well taken care of in that immediate aftermath. I was a charge nurse that day. So I was able to wait and kind of hand off to the next charge nurse, and then get down to the ER and get care.
That's awesome. I'm really glad to hear that. That is ideally what we want to hear. We want to hear that you're being immediately taken care of. Your leadership, your coworkers, they're coming saying, listen, we've got you. You go take care of you. And that is ideal. That is the ideal state that we look for when we have harmed. I'm going to hop in and say here that was not my story. I know I'm dealing with quite a few people right now who don't have your story, and it's heartbreaking. And I myself was assaulted not by a patient who was in the ICU, but who was in the ER. And under a Baker Act, which is what we all know that Leela, the nurse in Florida, also was assaulted by. And unfortunately, this patient, after attacking me, I was not taken well care of. I was forced to finish out my shift and with ice pack on my face, and I was not able to receive care for hours after. Tried to reach out for help later on, and I was not given the help that I needed. I was discarded. And then as I was able to go further into receiving help, it did not go well. It did not go well at all. And it actually ended up in having to go in legal matters to pursue getting the help that I needed. And unfortunately, that does happen a lot, or oftentimes it is skirted under the table. We don't report the violence. And that's one of those things. We look at it now, and you were able to be in a great environment where you recognized the symptoms, you reported the violence, and you were able to get the care. And the patient was safe as well, because at the end of the day, we care for our patients no matter what. What are the barriers that you think in situations where there are nurses who may not have the support system you have and may have the support system that I had? What do we do? When we know that reporting is step one, but you're afraid to report the problem, what do we do? What do we do in the healthcare community to say, I have a problem, I'm scared because I'm either going to be reprimanded, I'm going to be shunned at work, they're going to try to talk me out of it, which happens quite often. Walk us through what you think might be an appropriate solution or ways that nurses can go about this.
Yeah, that's a really tough place to be. And I'm really grateful that I, haven't had to experience that firsthand. I think a lot of that comes from a true culture shift, infrastructure shift in healthcare. And I think it's unfortunate because it can be really hard to start that from the inside out. But what I think, things that can be done from the inside are just, figuring out, is there a workplace violence committee at the facility that you're working at? And if there's not, gathering evidence, bringing evidence to the table, showing how prevalent these things are and how expensive these things are. It's ultimately, I think, a lot cheaper to put these preventative things into place and to track how often these things are happening to really show, this is a huge deal. This is happening every single day, multiple times a day, especially for bigger facilities, and showing the value behind why it's important to track. And I think it's really hard as nurses when you feel not taken care of by your facility to go in and want to spearhead something and to kind of bring it to the table and say, hey, I want to work on this. But I think that's something that kind of needs to be done. But at the bigger level, I think we need policy change. I think we need massive policy change nationwide, because there's no incentive for most facilities to report these things. There's no reason why we should have to. There are some things covered under OSHA, but not specific to these things. Some states have laws where it is mandatory to report these things. In Montana, we do have something that passed into law a couple years ago, is currently in the Senate, or will be discussed again in this current legislative session. And so we need to go out and explain to our lawmakers why these things are important, because a lot of them have no idea. When I tell my story to people, they're always like picking their jaw up off the floor, and it feels so surreal to them. And that's why I'm telling my story, because I want people to know this happens. It is real. It's not just in the movies. It's not just on TV shows. And any one of us is a near miss away from this being a reality for us. And I think we need to get out there and, get our facilities involved, get our lawmakers involved, and just kind of tell anyone who will listen, because healthcare needs to be safer for everyone.
Absolutely. I love that you said near miss, because we talk about near miss and we always talk about it in Sentinel events. And What people don't know, violence in healthcare is a sentinel event. It is actually recognized by JCAHO as a sentinel event, and sexual violence as well. I do have a friend who was recently sexually assaulted by a patient, and it is a sentinel event, and it is the fact that you come to work and you're fearful that these things happen, but those are big events. You've had a big event. I've had a big event. There have been these big catastrophic injury events that happen to people. But let's talk about that near miss. We're supposed to write up an incident report or go when we say we have a near miss with, say, medication or something else.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's the paperwork, right? We don't have time for the paperwork. We go in and just when the patient starts getting verbally escalating, when the patient starts making comments or statements, it almost feels like in a lot of areas of the hospital that we just walk away from that. But that is the first indication of violence, is the verbal violence, or the patient threatens, or the patient says they're going to do something. And a lot of times, because we've had to become so tough in dealing what we have, we write it off and go about it. That's part of the job, but it's actually not part of the job. That is one of the first indicators that violence may be on the horizon, is the angry way that they may speak. And whether we have to recognize as well, mental health plays a huge part in violence. In your situation, this patient was in a position where they were delirious, possibly had ICU delirium. It's common, it happens. They, in their right mind, probably would not have done what they had done. People who are mentally ill don't know. They know better. And when we try to come at them and we say we want to push what charges on them for felonies or whatnot, they're not in their right mind. They in their right mind would not have done those types of things. So where do we start in healthcare with saying, guys, we have to start from reporting the near misses, and administration and the hospitals need to make it easier. We have to be able to stop when the violence very first shows its signs of escalating, whether it be intentional or it not be intentional. Do you have some thoughts that you want to share about that?
Absolutely. And I really want to echo the point that you made, that having it be a felony, having that be the only recourse that we have, is not at all going to fix any of this problem. Having a million defibrillators around the country does not prevent heart attacks. It's a
Right.
great tool to help someone who's having a heart attack. And, felony charges can be an appropriate way in some cases after something happens, but it does not prevent, and it will not help this problem. But what will help this problem is getting tools into the hands of the healthcare providers doing the work to not only de-escalate situations, but better understand when something has the potential to get violent. I think de-escalation is huge, and we haven't taught that enough, but it's also not the only answer. We need to recognize, hey, this situation is not safe, or it is starting to feel unsafe. I need to start thinking about where I'm at in the room. How do I protect myself? Do I need to call for more help? What kind of help do I need to call for? And be getting that very early on. It's just like putting a pair of gloves on anytime you enter a room, having that universal precautions approach to workplace safety, the same way that we have a universal precautions approach to touching anything that's warm and wet and not yours. Put some gloves on. We need to have those gloves for ourselves. And when it comes to this workplace violence, and I think that's something that we almost wear it as like a badge of honor of like, oh, my patient, told me they were going to do this, or they yelled at this at me. And, now I have a really colorful note to write. We need to change that mindset for ourselves. And that's a culture change. But it also needs to happen from, just like you said, having it be the expectation that when we have events like this that don't result in anyone getting injured, that we're still reporting them, that we are showing, hey, on any given day, I have a patient that has expressed to me that they would hurt me if I don't do X, Y, and Z. And I think if we all think back to even for bedside, we think back to the last few weeks of shifts, we probably have a patient that said something that felt a little aggressive. But we're just not used to reporting those because nothing bad actually happened. So we don't report it. But when it comes to medication errors, we report those near misses all the time because we know what it feels like. Man, if that near miss had gone through and I would have caused harm to someone, I never want that to happen. I never want anyone to feel that. But for some reason, we don't have the same feeling when it comes to our own safety. We have that near miss happen, and a lot of times we just kind of brush it off and keep moving. And we need to understand the gravity of what that near miss could have been.
Absolutely. And this is protecting others. Some of it, they say that everybody will experience violence at some time at the bedside if you stay in long enough. And I don't think I know very many nurses who have not experienced that unless they were in, let's be real, it happens in labor and delivery, mother and baby in the happiest place in the hospital. It happens. People get angry, and we're not talking about just patients. We're talking about family members. We have family
Mhm.
members who come in, they don't feel their patient or their family members be taken care of the way that they think they should be, or they have some anger issues. And that's also a threat. We get the threats from the patients, we get the threats from the visitors, and then we also get the threats from the people who come in because, like we saw in the hospital in Pennsylvania, they come in because they were angry of prior care and take it out on current staff. I think, are you watching The Pit, Kelsey? Are you watching that at
I
all?
am.
So that's
Yes.
and I
Yeah.
HBO Max, if you're listening, I think if there needs to be a discount code for all nurses who do not have it so that they can go on and watch. I think it's been a fantastic show to the best of their ability without them actually being healthcare workers, depicting what we're actually going through. And that brings a point. We can actually illustrate exactly what you talked about one of the episodes where the patient in the waiting room, they're angry, they're mad, they are of sound mind, and they're angry because they have a very legit health concern. They're mad, they've caused multiple issues. There were multiple warning signs in that patient on the show that had they had been addressed at the near miss mark, it could have led to a different outcome. And that story that they showed was one that happens every single day. The patients get mad, they deck a nurse or deck EMT, they
Mhm.
deck EMS. It's not just nurses. This is a healthcare wide problem. The pharmacist can be in the room talking about medication and they're angry because they don't get the medication they want and they take it out on the pharmacist. This is anybody who has any patient care uh, hands-on experience that comes into this. So when do we deal with it? Do we deal with it after the patient has been decked outside and they have to come back in and get care? Or do we deal with it at the near miss point is where we have to start addressing the problems? And by reporting those things, even if it seems like nothing, they end up being data points. They end up showing a trend, if you will, to say, this is what's happening. Once this starts happening in the ER, there needs to be a plan. This person needs to be separated, and they do not need to be in general population. If you start acting out in the waiting room, you need to go somewhere else because not only are you a danger to the staff, you are also now a danger to the other people there. You're also a danger to people in the patients. And that's another great point that I want to come into with the what happens when you do get hurt. And this is very important, and this is something that even if you're not in healthcare, you need to understand. At some point in your life, you are going to be a patient in a hospital. You are going to need healthcare somewhere. Do you want the nurses who are taking care of you to be fully present at work, to feel safe, to feel comfortable and delivering quality care? Or do you want nurses who are afraid to come to work because 24/7 they're having to look behind their back wondering, am I going to get hurt? Am I going to get attacked? I'm not fully present at work because I'm dealing with the PTSD of somebody urinating on me, of somebody threatening to kill me and my family, of somebody actually throwing a punch at me, of somebody threatening my life and harm. Do you want that kind of nursing care? And right now, the healthcare across America, we are all scared. I don't know a lot of nurses who haven't thought in their mind after what's happened across this country lately. Should I really do I have to look over my shoulder when I'm at work? Why wouldn't you? The things that are happening are outrageous. So let's talk about if that happens to you, what is the next step? Because obviously I'm going to assume, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you've had some PTSD. I've had PTSD. I've had to get help for it. Have you also experienced a change in your mental health based on what happened to you at your place of work?
Yeah, I definitely have. And it's been a multi-year process to really unpack what I felt and uncover some really deep emotional mental wounds that have, occurred because of this. I thankfully, I have been someone who's been a huge proponent of therapy my whole life. And so when this happened, not only was it during the pandemic, but I knew it was a big enough event that I was like, I need to see someone, because even if I don't feel it right now, I'm going to feel something later. And I've essentially been in therapy ever since the injury. I do have PTSD. I have had panic attacks. I've had, all of the cardinal things, the flashbacks. I have struggled with feeling safe at the bedside, and I have not gone back to direct bedside nursing. Thankfully, I had actually, it was one of my last couple of shifts in the ICU when this happened. I had already taken another job to go work in the cath lab. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that was actually a saving grace for me, because that environment is so much more predictable and controllable in terms of, you don't want your patients moving in the cath lab. So your patients, are by and large always going to be very safe. It's going to be a safe environment. And that was a huge healing place for me, because I was never in a position where I felt unsafe. But I would get very triggered when I heard the overhead page that there was a violent patient. That would initiate my stress response. I had, a few instances where I was nearby when some of those events happened, and it very much put me into a panic attack, and I had to walk away and use some tools that thankfully I had from therapy to kind of recenter myself. But I am not sure I could ever go back to the bedside, at least right now, because I could not, I, I just can't separate myself if I were to be put in a similar situation again. I would not be able to care for that patient. With where I am right now, I can't speak for my future, but I have no plan on going back to the bedside directly in that capacity because of it. And it's really unfortunate. And I'm grateful that I am someone who feels very comfortable going to therapy, and I will shout it from the rooftops. I think everyone should feel very comfortable and safe going to therapy. But had I not, I think I'd be, in a much different place now as well. Because just going through the healing, there's a lot of, resentment. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of just struggle of figuring out, how do I move forward with my life when essentially everything has totally changed. There's not a part of my life that hasn't been affected by this injury. And I don't think I could have gotten through it if I didn't have the support system that I have, but the feeling of just knowing that I can go to therapy and I need help, and feeling okay with that. And I think a lot of people don't have that same, personal sentiment towards therapy or the support system that supports them going through that. And I want to, I really want to get that word out there as well.
Absolutely. It's so important. And that's, I also am in therapy and have been in therapy since my event. And it isn't, I do believe in therapy and I always have, but I was very ashamed to say that I needed therapy. It wasn't the first time that I had had panic over being at my job. This was not my first assault, and I had actually sought help much earlier on before that assault, due to an assault that I witnessed on another coworker friend of mine that I watched, and I kept thinking, why do I feel this way? I'm a badass ER nurse. I've been doing this for a while. I am not new to the game. I've had my hands in all sorts of nursing. I'm very much an experienced nurse. So why am I so scared? Why am I scared, and why am I afraid to say that something isn't right? And I do believe that a lot of us in nursing, we have that sentiment. We've also been trained to do that. we see the worst of the worst things that you should not ever, the human mind was not meant to comprehend. We see those things and then we compromise our own mental health saying, this was part of the job. I'm supposed to live with this. I'm supposed to deal with this and I'm supposed to move on. And I too had panic attacks at work and I didn't want to tell anybody. It was embarrassing. And I look back now on it and I think this was a warning sign to my body saying, you've had enough. Not only have you seen death and dying at its worst, you now have also had to be in the position where you think, maybe next time that punch to my face might end my career. Maybe next time it's a weapon and I will not be able to provide for my children. I will not be able to have the life that I wanted. And sadly, Leela in Florida is one of those examples. She'll never be able to nurse again. And that's a sad truth that we're all facing. So of course it's going to come with PTSD. Of course we're scared. And it is okay to say that you're scared right now. It is okay to say we are not in a safe position right now. We're nurses. We are not police officers. We are not soldiers in a war who have been equipped with weapons and guns and training to head out into a violent air area. However, we are being put in a position where now statistics are saying that a healthcare worker is more likely to be hurt at work than a police officer is on the job. But we are the healthcare's heroes. We are the world's most trusted profession. And you're sending us out telling us this, but then when the doors close behind us once we've clocked in, we're actually in a war zone. We're actually having to fight for our lives and pray to God we walk out of the shift okay, that nobody's hurt us. So of course there's going to be PTSD, and I want to mimic you and I echo you in what you say. Getting therapy, there is nothing wrong with getting therapy, and there are resources at a lot of hospitals that are going to provide those resources for you. So if you can reach out to your workplace and let them know, by all means, and if not, please reach out to me and I'll tell you how you can get those resources. So I want to talk about what is it that when we think about nursing and we think about, like we've said, the healthcare heroes and nurses trust profession, we absolutely are. And you yourself are an educator. You are teaching our new nurses that are coming up or even old nurses that need education. What can you give these new nurses that are coming into the field right now? What advice can you give them that you wish you had known coming into nursing, and especially how it's changed? What advice would you give them so that they can maybe be spared some of the things that we've had to go through and learn the hard way?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things is to just recognize that nursing is hopefully, if it's something they really enjoy, going to be a lifelong career for them. And in order to make that sustainable, that they have to take care of themselves first. It kind of comes back to that whole basic, like when you take a CPR class, scene safety, like you prioritize yourself first. We're taught to do that. Same thing in a pandemic. There's that kind of quote of like, there's no emergency in a pandemic. You have to put your gear on first. You have to take care of yourself first. And I think that comes to the thought of also making sure that, we academically make sure whatever department we work in, we do all this continuing education. We study up things that we're not current on. We're like, I want to be the best for my patient, give the best patient care. We need to invest that time into ourselves as well. So if there are opportunities for you to take extra courses when it comes to self-defense, workplace safety, de-escalation, all of those kinds of things, honor that time for yourself. It is important. It is not more important to learn ACLS and then put the self-defense at the back burner. Do them both. And if you have to, go to your employer and say, hey, I need these things. I, want to make sure that I am safe at work and that I can provide, care for a very long time and fight for those kind of things. I think it's really important too, when it comes to being in nursing school, is to also understand the emotional side of nursing. Not only are we supposed to, we're taught how to separate ourselves, to care for our patients very objectively, but we're always going to have an emotional side of things. So we need to learn how to identify those emotions, determine when we're no longer separating and if we're not separating in a healthy way. If we're coping in very unhealthy ways, we're not separating anymore. We're just blunting it. And so making sure that we're prioritizing our own mental health, our own physical health, our own safety, all of those things are very important. And if that means that you need to step away from your dream job because it doesn't feel safe to you in that moment, do it. Take a year off, go work somewhere that feels more safe, and then go back into it. You can, in almost every job that I have had, you can always go back.
Absolutely.
Especially, if you do it in a healthy way and you're not, permanently, blocked from something because maybe you did get injured. You can always go back, but put yourself and your own physical, mental, all of your health first.
Absolutely. Are there any other resources that you would like to share? I know that you are involved with the AACN. I know that you are very connected and you have great resources. Go ahead and share those with us so that anybody can try to find ways to
Yeah.
get involved.
Yeah. So I think professional organization membership is so amazing. I think it's crucial. No matter what kind of specialty you work in, there's professional organizations for everything. So I, being a critical care nurse, I'm a member of AACN, and I actually just wrote a blog post that just got published a couple days ago about my experience with workplace violence and some, kind of thoughts I have and resources and things in regards to that. But I think professional membership is probably the first place that I would start. I think the other things, and I'm forgetting the names off the top of my head, but I can send the links to Jana and have them put them out. But there's multiple different debriefing services out there that are run by nurses. One of them I can think of is debriefing the front lines. There's another one, Don't Clock Out. .org, and both of those are really great resources to use because they are run by nurses who have experienced it. They get it. They offer one-on-one debriefing services and support groups and things like that. I know that they've both offered free support for nurses who have been recently affected by wildfires, nurses who are affected by the shooting, a lot of different things. And so there's a lot of different resources out there that are, done by nurses. We're the ones who really understand. And I think that's important to know that those are out there.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing those. And thank you for coming on today. It's been amazing to hear you talk. And I want to, I like to end all these podcasts. I want to know, let's make this real and let's get really personal for everyone. Do you miss bedside?
I do. I miss the patient connection and the feeling of, being an ICU nurse when you have a patient for a few days in a row who starts out really critical and then you kind of see them through and hopefully get to see them get out of the ICU. I really do. I miss that connection. I'm grateful that I am still adjacent to it and I get to be involved with all of the nurses who are doing that work. But I do miss it.
Absolutely. Share the same sentiment. What is one thing that if you could change about nursing today and you got to wave the magic wand and it would be changed, what would it be?
I think it would just be that that universal precautions approach to workplace safety. We've done a really good job at identifying how to keep ourselves safe from illnesses and different pathogens and things like that. And I think we could do a huge service to healthcare in general if we could have that same approach when it comes to violence and safety.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that is a fantastic approach. And I really hope that people will catch on to that. I think that moving through, you're going to be a huge voice in healthcare and speaking up for nurses with violence. It's exciting to have you on and see that how well you've done, I'm so sorry for what has happened to you, but you've taken that trauma and you've turned it into something that is going to help others. And it's amazing. And you're going to do great things in nursing. And I really thank you for coming on and encourage everyone. Is there one person out there in the healthcare world anywhere that you would just like to thank for everything they've done and where you are today?
Yeah, so I'm going to break the rules. Actually, I have two people. The first one is just a nurse, a nurse who was really inspiring to me. And her name is Lisa, and she worked in the cath lab when I was going through nursing school. And she was just a huge inspiration of just kind of always striving to learn more and be the best in her craft to take care of patients, but take care of her team as well. And then the second nurse is actually my recovery room nurse. When I woke up from surgery after my jaw surgery, I woke up obsessed about having dry, chapped lips, and I was wired shut, and that was my biggest concern. And she went into her purse and got a brand new tube of Carmex and pulled that wrapper off, and I think she squirted like half the tube on my lips to make sure that I did not have to worry. And I will never forget her. And it reminded me how such a simple act makes the biggest difference in patient care and being on that other side. I'll never forget that. So just wanted to
Absolutely.
give her a shout out.
We all have that. All of us nurses, we have something special to offer. And thank you for being the special nurse that you are. We will, in an article, we'll have some links that we'll be able to link so you can see Kelsey's article on ACN. And then we will also have some resources for you to be able to get help if you need to get help, and links to reach out to us if you want to ask any questions. And if you want to know more about Kelsey's story, ask her for support. We will provide all of that for you. Thank you all for joining in. And please know that coming up, we're going to be doing 2 more episodes. And these are going to be episodes that are going to be talking about the actual ways that there are laws and legislation in place about to happen, and ways that you can get involved in one of the biggest movements that is about to hit the country in creating safe workplaces for everybody who handles patients in any capacity. So I hope that you'll listen with those. It's going to be a great episode, great 2 episodes. And we all hope that you're staying safe out there and take care of yourselves. And once again, remember, nursing is the greatest profession. It is an honor to be a nurse. We respect and we care for all of you, and we're always here for you. Y'all have a great day. Thank you again, Kelsey, for coming on. And once again, it's a
Yes,
great day to
thank
be a
you.
nurse. Bye-bye.